how we think about things can manifest physically. And that was a stretch back then for me to go, wow, I think that, how does that work? But he gave me an example and he goes, consider an ulcer. It is pretty much accepted that an ulcer is caused by, I think, anxiety and worry and stress. And so think about that. That's a mental thing that manifests physically. And that was a great example. And that was for me a tipping point. I went, oh, I can connect that dot. I can see that. And then other evidence showed up is that, I haven't had a cold for more years than I can even remember. And be honest with you, I haven't been sick for more years than I can remember. And at times when if I had a cold, if I had a flu, I could always connect the dots to me feeling some level of stress or anxiety or something was going on for me at that time. So that's just a little bit of my own experience and what I believe, but I'd be interested in, what research you've done or how you view that, given you're the expert here, not me.
Yeah, so I would agree. And usually the way it would be termed is that it's stored somatically, right? Like trauma, as an example,
Mhm.
is often stored in our body. So we're not consciously aware of where it's stored. We can't often access it because sometimes the trauma happened, before we actually even have memories, or our brain has done things to make it so that we don't have access to that memory. But yeah, so those things often get stored in the body and show up then over time as maybe that individual's Achilles heel, so to speak,
Mhm.
right? And so one of the things I saw, when I worked more directly with patients, I did a fair amount of what I think of as NLP, or neuro
Yep.
linguistic programming type of
Sure.
approaches. And that, sometimes, like, one example, right? And this can be different, but I'll just give you a personal example. So I've never had allergies. And I think of allergies as more like a stressful thing, right? If we're above a certain exposure, most of us will have it. Some people are more sensitive. But at the time, I had moved to northern Idaho, was living in Sandpoint. I'd found this really cool old down Army Navy-ish sleeping bag. And it was end of September. I'm like, oh, cool. I'll just take it and go, sleep outside in the woods tonight. And I woke up that morning with crazy allergies.
Mm.
So I did, herbal things, naturopathic protocols
Yep.
to try to, dampen the allergies, and figured, like, oh, physiologically it makes sense. Maybe, something, the down, something, right? Even though I've never been allergic to down in the past. And, so, most of that day passed, allergies were still as bad as when I woke up. And lying down that night, I just started to almost have what I think of as a self dialogue, and just said, the part of me that really knows what's going on here, help me out here, because I don't know. But I want to make sure that whatever you really need is, something I help you get. And I just had this flash in my brain of, I don't ever want you to be cold like that again. So the part of the story I left out is that night was really cold,
Mhm.
and the down wasn't even, so it was a cold night sleeping outside in nature. And I said,
Yeah.
like, well, I don't ever want to be that cold again. How about I just use my other sleeping bag? And it was like, great. And I just literally felt the allergies just like almost like a line went down from my top of my head through my body, just scrubbing them away. So, that's just a story. But I've seen lots of things like that working with people, where there's almost this really crazy, profound mind body connection, where the part maybe responsible for a symptom in that case wants something good for us. We don't
Mhm.
understand what that is. It hasn't really communicated it. And at the end of the day, we're dissatisfied with the symptom. But if we knew the intent, then often we'd be like, yeah, cool, I would want that too. And so, a big part of the brain is it's the interface there. But what often happens is things that are stored in our body, one, we're not skilled at having the a simple conversation I did, two, maybe we have it, but we get no insight. And three, some things, like I said, are just stored so deeply. It's almost like the brain's protecting us from
Sure.
ever knowing what happened. So, I would be of the same mindset as you, that many, many common health problems have some part of if not are primarily part with the brain being involved. And I think the general statistics in medicine is something like 80% of all conditions have at least stress as a contributor, maybe not the cause, but at a minimum making things worse.